Welcome to the acclaimed podcast, The Deep Dive, featuring your esteemed hosts, Andy Monitor and Drew Dinzik, powered by BetSperts.
Welcome to The Deep Dive. We are live and in person in Vegas.
Yeah, we touched. Oh, I bet that was loud in the microphone. Right off the bat. Apologies. But
and if you're listening to this podcast, we have a special bonus episode. Obviously, we have already covered in depth our week one preview, and this is an exciting conversation because I do not think it is hyperbole to say that there is one person in the NFL space who covers what is going on the football field above all else. No, I'm talking about our guest.
Yes, there we go.
Yes, YouTube sensation, Brett Kollmann. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Do you feel uncomfortable being qualified as YouTube sensation, a YouTuber?
I'm a dude that makes videos about football in a spare bedroom and makes a little bit of money along the way betting on those videos.
We tend to do this where we don't like purposely embarrass our guests. But like even when we have when we have Eric Eager on, we always make sure to put Dr. Eric Eager.
Course,
he would never introduce
Wait,
himself.
he's really a doctor?
He has a PhD in math, applied math or something. So he's technically a doctor.
Wow.
He would never introduce himself as that, but we always do. So so it's not just you. We do our best to pump up the guest. And, we're excited. You're out here. We're meeting you in person for the first time, and both of us have watched a bunch of your stuff.
Yeah,
for a long time.
Honestly, I don't think it is hyperbole because it is not easy to build a brand when you are just creating on your own without really any boost, without any kind of any kind of push. You create videos for the NFL. If you haven't already seen them, check them out on YouTube, and they're outstanding. And I've learned, as someone who has followed football for 25 years and has bet heavily for, I know I'm old. Somebody who has bet heavily for, I guess 20 years now. Jesus. I still learn stuff by watching your content. So first and foremost, thank you for putting it all out there for free. And I'm curious about your journey. Like, what got you into this space in the first place? And I know for sure you have some cool stories in your past.
Yeah, I mean, I worked at NFL Network on the production side. And ironically, like when I first started making these videos, like I wasn't even really putting a whole lot of effort into them. It was just like kind of crappy audio quality and crappy edits and stuff like that. Because it was really just like proof of concept for my producers for a segment that I wanted to actually produce NFL Network. And I wasn't even going to be the talent. It was like, hey, let's get LaDainian Tomlinson to talk about how to read power when talking about Melvin Gordon, not me.
Sure.
And like, honestly, the format that I was doing wasn't really like good for TV. Like it was far too long and everything like that.
I don't know how that goes.
So it never really worked out for TV, but doing one of those like every 6 months or something like that, eventually I got to like 11,000 subscribers when I barely put anything out.
Jeez.
And my wife looked at me one day, she's like, look, you're not even trying and it's going okay. What happens if you actually do this? And so I had time of my life working at NFL Network. I loved working there. I still talk to, all my old friends from there, Charlie, Flo, like all my producers. I did Total Access. I did NFL Red Zone. I did Game Day Morning, Draft, all that stuff. And it was time of my life. But I decided, I don't have kids yet. I don't have a whole lot of like life obligations yet. If there's ever a time for me to take a chance and fail, now is it. So my last day was the day before the Pats Falcons Super Bowl, and I went full-time day after that and never looked back. It somehow worked.
Yeah, and I mean, Brett's been here for a bit. Like he stopped over at the BetSperts house probably 40 minutes ago. So we've been chatting off the air a lot, and we had some interesting conversations already. And I think a big part of it was just how differently we approach stuff. Like I felt bad. Like I was almost ashamed of it. Like, I don't watch that much film after the games happen. Like if I need to go back and watch a section, I'll go find it. But for the most part, we're doing like, we call it the box score autopsies.
Sure.
Digging back, finding context, figuring out if what we saw or the notions that we're left with after Sunday is what we actually should be left with when we're making adjustments to the market. So like how you do things is just so different. And I think that's why we find it so interesting.
Absolutely.
Like, and I guess that would be the biggest question is, start back at that point where even while you were still at NFL Network, and the first part of the question, were you doing any betting or DFS or fantasy at that point? But how has what you've started and gotten to now where you're at, how has that helped you evolve? Doing anything where you're, obviously the whole game is getting some financial windfall out of and loving a game like this so
capitalizing
much.
on your edge
via DFS fantasy and betting. Just how has what you've done translated to making you better at that? Because honestly, that's what I just want to know. So I want to improve. Yeah, I want to improve.
I want to get better.
Yeah, we need to add to the toolkit.
Well, it's funny because while I worked at NFL Network, like back in the day, I should say, we weren't really quote unquote allowed to bet because there weren't those partnerships in place.
It's frowned upon.
Stuff wasn't entirely legal in all the states.
Goodell came out and said, like, we're not going to get involved with gambling with this. And do you remember the fantasy football debacle? Where it was going to be in Vegas. It was like that was not that long ago.
Yeah. And now look at us.
I know.
Now Caesars
they have 10 official partners.
Put their name on the Superdome. Like. So it's been a crazy change, but back then I think we were like quote unquote allowed to bet like $300 a season total or something like that. So
it's super weird that they just would put a cap.
What?
I mean, it depends on. It's not like they checked.
Yeah, how do they audit that?
They didn't
self-reported. Okay,
I see. It's one of those things where it's like if you're going to do it, just don't be
tell
anybody.
Ostentatious about it. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Like don't just show up to work one day when you're an intern wearing a Rolex. And so like I didn't do it as much back then because to be honest, I was completely brand new to it as well.
Sure.
Like I really wasn't super knowledgeable in the ins and outs and everything like that. And even like this, like I would bet favorites a lot.
Of course.
Just because
this team's good, they're gonna win. I'll bet all the points
without realizing it's like you'll win, but like not a lot.
Sure.
And so it took me a while, as I kind of went on my football analysis journey to realize like, hey, I'm actually pretty good at picking out dogs.
Okay.
It's like maybe I should take some chances on those little by little. And I remember my big one that I hit was Eagles Patriots, that Super Bowl.
Oh wow!
When I did the over and the Eagles as a double up at like just full send on it.
Yeah,
I put down an irresponsible amount of money on that, and it hit. And I was like, okay, I'm okay. I can do this for real. And all of a sudden it then kind of progressed from there until last year. Now, like the last couple of years, I think is where I really started to take the film study and then turn that into actionable betting things.
Of course.
Like I did, I'll give you an example. I did a film room on the Chiefs-Bucks first meeting.
Sure.
And it was on the Chiefs offense. And it was literally a video on like, hey, there's some concerns here that might come back to bite them. It was about Pat Mahomes' drop depth. Mm-hmm. It was about the difference in effectiveness of their passing game versus one high safety shells versus two high shells. And you look at the first half of that first meeting where Tampa was playing one high and they were hitting Tyreek on the deep crossers to number 3 because that's how they beat one high. And they put up like 20 points in like the first 17 minutes or something like that. Next thing you know, in the second half, Tampa comes out, they're playing more two high.
They proved they could fix it.
Completely shut them down. And I was like, that's concerning that small of a change in defense had that big of an impact in the Chiefs passing game because they couldn't run the ball. Their only shot was passing. They couldn't even run in the red zone. Like unless they were calling like design rollouts or screens or something like that, they were not going to score inside the 5. So I was like, this really concerns me. And then we see in the rematch, Tampa's playing too high. Chiefs still can't run the ball. Yeah, we could talk about the offensive line injuries and everything like that. But
things,
but it was a systemic issue with how the Chiefs handled two high safety structures last year. And that caused me to smash Tampa Bay in that game. And I came away with a lot more money than I had the day before.
That's fantastic. that wrinkle is
so fun to win on the Super Bowl too, especially if you're not like a degen like me who's betting like 9 different sports. Like I got a shout out to our guy Suma.
Yeah,
legitimately the Iron Will. The only thing he bets is NFL. Yeah. Like he won't bet anything until he's placing futures later on in the season.
And playing Super Bowls.
And that's the thing. If you win the Super Bowl, that money, that money's just going to sit there. Yeah. So, and we were sitting over there by the pool talking about all good things before you got here. We were just kind of planning out some stuff, and we were like spinning into questions. You got to talk about the Josh Allen thing.
Yeah,
Let's go with that first, and then we'll get to the inverse of what I came up with there.
So many ways to skin a cat, many ways to develop an edge. Obviously, I love the way you phrased it, actually, Andy. You want as many tools in your toolbox as possible when you're handicapping. Most of the folks out there who are kind of developing an edge in the betting market are doing so with numbers, with data. They're advanced analytical models, things like that. And there's lots of stuff that you already just said, like depth of drop and in-game adjustments that you can only pick up on film that is qualitative, period, right? And I'm curious, how at this point, how much of an edge comes from evaluating quarterback play and identifying, what would qualify as a true improvement at the court, from the way the quarterback is performing, because you can have a quarterback who just happens to have a good day and stat sheet looks good. He covered the spread. He pulls off the big upset. People may say, oh, this guy's got it now. Let's go back them. Right. But it could have just been a good day, and maybe he's got a bad day the next time out.
There's been many seasons that have been the Bills are a good example. The Lamar taking a step forward, absolutely a giant step forward from a quarterback is huge.
Yeah, of course.
But you identifying it early.
Yeah, if you identified Josh Allen week 1, week 2 last year, you made absolute bank on the over, on the Bills throughout the entire duration of the season. It was absolute smash. So I guess, at this point, how important is your quarterback evaluation, and what specifically are you looking at to get a sense that this guy has made a meaningful step forward in how he is performing at the position?
And it's ironic that you mentioned that, because last year, it was after week 2 or week 3, I put out a Josh Allen video.
Sure.
I said the Josh Allen revenge tour has begun. And it was talking about how absolutely insane he was after those first 3 weeks. And I was like, this is real.
Buying in on that was it was hard, but
it was hard.
At the time, everybody thought I was crazy. They're like, it's Josh Allen. He's like a 55% completion thrower for his career. And I was like, I don't care. Like, look at what he's doing right now. And then it just kept going and going and going. It was the year before that. After week 3, I put out a video and it said Lamar Jackson can throw now.
I remember that one. That one was one of your best.
Won MVP. The year before that, after week 3, I said, this was 4 starts into Pat Mahomes' career.
Sure.
I said, Pat Mahomes is ridiculous. Yeah. He won MVP. So it's like late September, I have a trend the last 3 years.
Okay.
When I put out a video on a young quarterback that I really like, it hasn't luckily been a fluke so far.
Okay.
This year, I can't guarantee that I'm going to be doing that video on him, but I have a sneaking suspicion.
I doubt that.
I was trying to think of a young quarterback.
Justin Herbert.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
And Justin Herbert actually was my pick for MVP.
He's
plus
such a long conversation about that.
We could talk about this for 20
when we did
minutes.
our Chargers preview, we're like, does everything just hinge? And the crux of this is like, is he good? Like, is he good, or was it just teams hadn't seen him and he was playing above average? But because the Chargers legit, it's like, if it works, if he makes even a little step forward, it's like, this is a playoff team. They won 6 games last year.
Of course.
And then again, when he said that, I'm trying to think of a way that doesn't just shit all over what Drew said. We're like, well, because when we had this conversation, we're like, well, obviously quarterback is important. Yeah. Like my little, my kids can tell you quarterback's important in football. Like that makes total sense. And we started talking just back and forth, like, when you're developing or you're looking at film, you're looking at other position groups, other positions, and we're thinking like, what makes the biggest difference? And again, this is gonna be a question. This is where we landed, but especially for you watching all 22, you said, how many times are there secondary players who are not even visible when the snap starts if they're a high
almost
safety?
all of them.
Always.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, once the play develops, there's a lot of times where, the camera's going to go to one side of the field. You're not going to see that corner or a slot corner for the rest. Like, people who just watch the broadcast, they might be missing like 80% of what the cornerbacks and D-backs are doing. And that's a big part of the inverse of what the quarterback's doing is the coverage unit. Like, that was interesting once we got into it. And we wanted to ask you about that as far as, like, can you glean something big from coverage unit? Film study, since a lot of people just aren't even seeing what those guys are doing if they're not digging.
It kind of depends, because like for people that are like heavy on data of like, hey, they play X percentage of man coverage, X percentage of zone coverage. It depends on who's actually doing the charting of man versus zone, because there's a lot of zone coverages that look like man.
Of course.
Like a zone call where if it's like a 3x1, the backside corner is going to be pressed. It's zone, but that specific guy is 100. They call it meg, man everywhere he goes. It's a Saban terminology. In a lot of like match quarters looks, we all trust Saban, which his defense is more complicated than like virtually every single NFL defense, but people won't admit that. But like, their match quarter zone looks like if it's a 3x1, that backside corner is going to be manned up all the time.
Okay.
And even then they play zone coverage with man coverage principle. So it's like that stuff might be charted as man coverage. And so if somebody's trying to go into like bet an Alabama game and they're like, oh, say Ole Miss, their expected points per pass against man coverage is X and Alabama plays this much man coverage. Like, unless you really trust the person who's charting the man versus zone calls, sometimes it's a little tough to use that data.
Okay.
And so I think everything needs to be used together.
Mm-hmm.
Never rely on any one thing too much. Like don't even rely on film study too much, because sometimes you can see a play and get super amped up and you see it happen one time and that guy can do it that one time, but then they never do it again.
Yes, the literal smallest of sample size.
Yeah.
Smallest
It's
sample
like
size.
everything worked out perfect. It's like, is that repeatable?
Yeah.
And the answer can be yes.
Well, in the case of too high safety with Tampa against Mahomes, it was repeatable.
Mm-hmm.
Let me expand on that thought a little bit, because I hadn't really thought through this. Is there anyone in the AFC who can emulate that approach? Did Todd Bowles kind of come up with a sort of a blueprint to stop Mahomes? Are there adjustments that Andy Reid and his offense can make to counter that? And can Mahomes develop and beat that if he faces it again in the Super Bowl, if we get a Super Bowl rematch or something like that?
Half of the Chiefs division, unfortunately,
Can repeat that.
When you
Chargers
look at
played them tough.
the chart, and that's the thing is their defensive coaching and defensive system this year, will place a little bit more emphasis on too high because it comes from the Vic Fangio tree, and Vic Fangio also happens to be in that division as well. They both run very similar systems, very similar languages.
Okay.
And the key is having phenomenal safeties. Both of those teams have phenomenal safeties.
Yeah, they do now. Yeah, we're getting some people healthy down. I'm almost in San Diego, but
when you're going through the Chiefs division games and you're betting the Chiefs division games this year, specifically against Denver and the Chargers,
Of course.
just be careful.
Or taking points.
just
take the points.
Take the
unders.
unders, because the Chiefs defense is also really, really good. Like, people don't understand how good this Chiefs defense is going to be.
We were going to stick to a lot of process stuff, but now this is something that's kind of been in our craw a little, because some people brought it up and we didn't have a chance to really put a good, firm, opinion on our end about it. But like the reconfiguration of the defensive line for the Chiefs,
it's going to work.
Yeah, I just want a take, like a 3-word take. It's going to work.
Because when you people, oh god, just dropped my phone. Because when people look at like Chris Jones at defensive end, they're like, well, he's not 250 pounds. This isn't going to work. And it's like, that's not how they're using him. They're putting him as a heavy 7 or a heavy 5, where his one job is to take this tight end and just push him straight into Narnia. Like, the run game will not work to his side. It's gonna look very similar to probably some like Belichickian style defenses in terms of or even like you go back to like Legion of Boom, where they had Brandon Meebane, who's like a 330-pound defensive end. It's gonna look very similar to that. But then in pass rush situations, Meebane would come off the field. Michael Bennett would kick inside. It's gonna be the same thing for Chris Jones. He's gonna be a 3 technique, and then they run so many blitzes anyway that you don't really need a true like bend the edge Von Miller type. Like, they're sending 5 or 6 guys anyway.
So it's more of a scheme based on the overall roster of defensive linemen they had, not specifically like we need to get Chris Jones doing this.
And Chris Jones is so good that it's going to work whether he's on the edge or inside anyway. But how they emphasize their pass defense is coverage rotations, disguises, everything like that, while also sending bodies at you from every single angle that you're not going to see coming, and it's going to force mistakes. So you're looking for turnovers, you're looking for all that kind of stuff, plus they're really going to run defense too. So it's a long way to say, Chiefs versus Chargers, Chiefs versus Broncos. Bet the under and sleep like a baby.
And it reminds me of my one foray into film study the other year. Remember that when I learned about wide nine?
I do, yeah.
And it's like, oh my God, like why are coaches? It just made me feel bad about other coaches. Like, why are so many coaches dumb? Like, this is like it worked with their personnel. It worked really well, and like they just went with it. And you see all these coaches just like it's like they're fighting against themselves sometimes. Like, hey, this is how it's always been done, and this is what we're gonna run. It's like, well, that worked really. It was not the Niners like 2 years ago, I believe. They took some guys.
The Eagles have done it. Lions have done it. Bills have done it. It's a
interesting. Okay, so Buffalo or Cleveland match up particularly well against Kansas City, or not so much in your opinion?
Well, I would have said Buffalo, but when you look at the AFC Championship game, the game plan that the Chiefs used in that game was wildly different than almost the rest of their season.
Sure.
Very RPO heavy,
yep.
Taking advantage of, leverage on linebackers that had to play the run, at least the threat of the run, taking advantage of the fact that when you are in two high safeties, that's a lot of ground to cover to try to get to Travis Kelce in the flat on those RPOs.
Like impossible, yeah.
And they murdered them with that,
yeah.
And then never used it again. They didn't use it at all in the Super Bowl, and I'm like, I didn't understand the game plan from them in the Super Bowl. So again, it's another one of those things, small sample size. We've seen them do it. Will they do it again? I think Buffalo can go back and look at that game and learn some things and change how they're matching up. But I still am a little bit wary about either of them matching up.
Yeah, pro is Buffalo has a great coaching staff. They retained everyone from their great coaching staff. Con, the exact same thing can be said about Kansas City.
Yeah,
and their offensive line is better.
And their offensive line is going to be better. Mahomes is healthier. We'll assume he doesn't get dinged up too bad. He is healthier than he was. So, I mean, that's rough. And I do like the Browns. It's just going to be hard to – sometimes I feel like we try to be contrarian just for the sake of, like, let's not just bet the chalk. Like, let's try to make cases for the Browns. That, the Chargers even is a longer shot. The Broncos is a longer shot. And obviously, we do love the Bills quite a bit. After it felt like it was like a moment last year when we finally bought in because we were so vehemently anti-Josh Allen, mostly because honestly, because of some of you guys on the internet, there was just some really shitty Bills fans that were like, they were wrong because they're like, he's so good.
They were wrong for 2 years.
Yeah, they were wrong for 2 years.
In hindsight, we're very right.
And it made us harder it made it harder for us to pivot because then when you're seeing it, it's like all the things we bitched about, we said, all right, we joke, like, if he can fix this, he'll be a good quarterback.
Which no one ever has.
But then he did. And it's like, come on.
And I wonder, it's like it had to be some combination of, again, their coaching staff getting him to where he needed to be. And some heavy commitment from him to fix those things. Because, like, again, we may never see a quarterback go from that level to that level that quickly. Sure. I mean, it was nuts. And after we bought in, we're kind of Bills guys. We're mafia. I'm not going to do the table thing.
Let me pivot.
If they win the Super Bowl,
do the table thing.
I will do the steel table here. Break my back. God.
Let me pivot and ask you a question real quick about the NFC because we just saw Tom Brady and he has one of the most spectacular suite of weapons in the offensive passing game that we have seen of all time, probably. If you are trying to win the NFC and you have to go through Tampa Bay this year, what do you do schematically to try to stop Tampa Bay from scoring 30 points?
You don't.
You have to score 30.
You have to get turnovers. You have to punch the ball out like they did on Godwin. You have to get turnovers because let's say like teams last year, they played a lot of what's called vice coverage on Chris Godwin in the slot, where you're leaving Mike Evans alone outside, you're leaving AB alone outside, you're doubling Godwin inside and out because they know that Brady likes to work the middle of the field. So you have an inside leverage player on the middle of the field, so Brady takes away that option for him. You have an outside leverage player so that Godwin can't just roll it outside for easy first downs. You're taking your chance with your biggest corner on Mike Evans because the best asset he has at this point is size.
Sure.
You probably put your number one on AB on the outside because you have to.
He looked good.
Yeah.
And then you pray to God that Gronk doesn't have one of those like vintage Gronk games. Other than that, not much you can do. Just outscore.
It is just to make like the entire world. Again, my children know Gronk is going up the seam, and he's just bigger than you, and your linebacker can't hang with it. But it's still just we've been watching it forever. It just always works. It is pretty. Like I'm trying to think of. I don't think I can think of other 3 receiver sets that have been around the team. I can't think of one that had a tight end that went with it. I had to look if it was Matthew Hatchett or Andrew Glover, but because I went to Moss Reed Carter in '98, but it was it was Andrew Glover. Your tight end. Andrew Glover was a fine tight end. He was not Gronkowski. To take 3 receivers of that level and then to throw in a Hall of Fame tight end, it is kind of stupid when you think about the fact that they didn't. I mean, they didn't even. It wasn't really a doubt that they weren't going to cover the end number. It got out to juicy. You could pay a few cents and get a 10 at some points last night. It was nuts how much steam came on it, and the Cowboys damn near won the game. So that's all year. It's going to be fun to watch that team.
What did you guys have last night, by the way?
6.5 with the Bucks. So that's not super psyched at the outcome.
Yeah.
When did you get 6.5? Like a month ago?
In June?
August.
Yeah,
August.
that was one of your first bets. I rode along with our boy Suba. I think I got 51 because I wasn't fast enough on the trigger to get 50.5. But no, that was a good look by them. And honestly, I said that we were with some of the circuit guys last night. I said, don't you sometimes wish you didn't bet or get involved in this? Wouldn't that just been a fun game to watch?
Yeah,
I
wish I had not had action last night because I was frustrated with the turnovers.
Because every time Dallas did something cool, you would have been like, come on.
Yeah, I know, right?
Oh, no, and when you want to make especially NBA, get this guy in the game. You're yelling at the TV for a substitution. Every time Dallas would cross the 50, I'm like, oh man, get a different head coach quick. We're getting in the red zone with
and ultimately for entertainment value, we want Dallas to be what we saw last night, which is an aggressive, exciting plus EV run offense. And so I was cheering for that, even though I had Bucks minus 6.5. But ultimately, the Bucks are still freaking sloppy, man. There's so many sloppy things.
It's still week 1.
I'll give them sure, but and they're sloppy in a lot of ways. There were some decisions that Arians made that I was upset about. There were some decisions in the past, targeting Leonard Fournette consistently in the passing game drives me insane.
And not Gio Bernard, who they signed specifically for that.
Yeah, why in the world?
It's not the playoffs.
It's insane.
Leave Lenny for the playoffs.
It's insane. And I think, that obviously the turnovers and penalties on top of all of that made it very frustrating to be a Bucks backer last night. But I don't know that anyone's stopping that team unless they stop themselves. So
just remember our motto for the folks watching at home: good teams win games, great teams cover.
Yeah.
It might be one of those Tampa Bay was 15-2 this year, and they were 7-10 against the spread. You are going to pay.
It was a roller coaster last year.
For sure.
Yeah, even winning the game last night, not covering obviously, but people are just going to remember, and you look back, that's a W.
Yeah.
And you are going to pay a premium for teams like this going forward, especially how they look. So
yeah. Okay. Here, last question for you, and then we'll wrap because this has been super fun and taking a lot of time. What game in week 1 are you the most excited to break the film down when you get to your computer on Tuesday? When the All 22 comes out, the first one you're going to click on, if you had to guess right now.
Bears. I have the best All 22.
Don't even get me started.
It's like some kid with a handicap with the Raptors. Sting is filming that.
We get Pats Dolphins week 1, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm very intrigued to look at Mac Jones versus that Flores defense because the Miami defense in general is just one of the more fun for me to study because they don't care. They will throw everything at you. It's so blitz heavy, so many crazy pressures. Not to mention their secondary is really good.
Yeah.
I really can't wait to see Mac Jones and how he handles that, because if he can handle that week 1 in his first start, I think things are looking pretty decent for Patriots future.
Yeah. As just like a human being, it pains me to cheer for the Patriots at all. But I have Mac Jones has kind of grown on me. He handled the preseason.
Has nothing to do with your offensive rookie of the year ticket.
Oh no, I do, and I do have some of that too.
You got 10-1. Yeah. Was it before?
Yeah,
the
week before they
announced,
during
there was one book that was a
little. You know what it was? The day that Cam was announced out of practice.
When he had that 5-day thing, we hit it.
Smash it.
Yeah.
Well, every Patriots reporter could not wait to get their Twitter open and just glow about how good he looked in that practice. And it was basically oh, he's getting the week 1 job. 10-1, 11-1 is widely available. I mean, you have to bet that.
And the way he handled it, again, it's the preseason. You're not seeing a ton of you don't see exotic blitz packages in the preseason, but still, there's rookies and even younger veteran quarterbacks sometimes look a little frazzled sometimes coming out early in the he handled everything with aplomb.
Yeah.
He seemed to have poise. His mechanics look just as good as they have. And I'm tentatively excited for obviously to catch that ticket, but I like seeing young quarterbacks come in the league and succeed. I hate watching teams waste high draft picks. Be like, oh, good.
The Darnold situation, Rosen
Cade
situation.
McDowell.
Sucks,
This is fun. Keely Smith.
Who'd you do for defensive rookie of the year? Real quick before we get out.
Oh, wow.
I really have not attacked that market. We went defensive player.
Away at Baltimore was one.
Jamin. I have a little on Jamin, maybe?
No, you're out on Away.
Zaven Collins.
Oh, interesting.
2,500 you're getting on.
I feel like we talked a little about a couple of linebackers.
I guess here's the question. Is the Cardinals defense going to be good enough in the mind of the voter to give an award to somebody on that?
They've thrown so much at it over the past 2 years. Doesn't it have to be a little better?
I think it will be better. I mean, I don't know if it'll be like a top 5 unit or something like that.
Because a lot of times the guys that vote on awards, they're not actually breaking the film down. You know this. They're they're literally looking at the leader in tackles among rookies, and they're like, "Well, that guy's at the top."
I like the cut of his.
That's why I'm doing it because
A,
he's just a really good player. He's basically
on the field a lot.
He's like Brian Urlacher's illegitimate son. I swear to God, like how he's
why he had to get the airplanes.
And he's gonna get 125 tackles.
Okay.
He's gonna get 5 or 6 sacks, probably a couple picks. You remember, God, who was it in his rookie year? He was with Buffalo and then bounced around with Miami and the Saints or something like that. Former Oregon player who started out.
Deion Jones or Deion.
Oh, not him. It's a linebacker. Totally blanking on his name.
As soon as we turn this off, he'll
I will
just yell it.
But he started out his career in his first month with 10 tackles a week, a pick, and a sack per week. That's the kind of game that Zaven Collins is.
And he's going to play. The biggest thing, and we talked about this right off the bat with any awards. Obviously, MVP different. It is going to be volume. The guy has to be starting, he has to be playing, and he has to be playing in a spot where he's going to get some stats. It is harder with linebackers because a bunch of if a cornerback, and that's how you lose this bet. A cornerback we talk about Murphy Bunting. Murphy Bunting kind of sucks, but people knew his name in the postseason because he was just right place, right time kind of guy. Here's a pick.
He's getting targeted a lot.
He was getting targeted a lot. So he had a couple lucky picks. He's hey, this guy's not actually good. And the same thing can happen with one of these rookie corners. Just be in the right place at the right time, get 7 picks. It's going to be hard for anyone to not vote for you. It's tough.
I still think ultimately the voters are going to look at the counting stats.
Yeah, that is such a counting stat.
And if there is a guy who is on a perceived good defense, that's who they'll fire on.
Well, if you really want a deep one at 40 to 1, you're getting Asante Samuel Jr.
Yeah, he looks.
Who's going to get he's going to get a lot of picks. It was announced that he won the starting job this week. He's going to be on a great defense. It's going to get a lot of attention because of who their quarterback is.
Staley.
And that's the thing too. People, Surtain had that against the Vikings. And everyone's I'm betting him. Not at this number. And it's
40 to 1 for Samuel Jr.
40 to 1.
Yeah, I'd way rather have some Samuel than Surtain. I'd like to believe in Surtain.
You put $20 on that, you're getting what?
$820 back.
Yeah,
it's good.
So.
All right, I'm gonna bet it. I'm in.
All right, I'm in too.
Thank you, Brett. We gave us an actionable angle there. Asante Samuel Jr., Defensive Rookie of the Year. I didn't really have a strong opinion on that.
We really did shy away.
I thought that market was too tight. Yeah,
we went down the list and talked ourselves out of every
8 guys. Yeah, that guy's too high. That guy,
I mean, the draft is my thing.
Was huge at the top of the board.
It's
no way.
That's a trap. Don't take.
Yeah, we were there should be value here. I just don't know where.
Yeah, whenever there's somebody at the top,
yeah,
whose the number is stupid, it's somebody down the ball.
Somebody. Yeah,
he's taking so much of the market share. There's going to be value. We just kept going down to and again, we did this way back early. We didn't know who was going to be starting. This is before camps and stuff. So, no, I'm in on that.
I like this.
Yeah, before we
when he has
before
3
we let
picks
you go
against
here.
Pat Mahomes week 3, we'll start beating the drum.
We'll use
Defensive Rookie of the
any
Year.
small media club that we have here at this table.
Yeah.
We'll be pumping.
We'll
talk
tires.
to anybody
We'll
we
pump
know.
his tires big time.
We'll talk to Brinson.
Bookmakers.
Brinson, maybe mention that on
mention on
CBS.
CBS. Yeah, exactly.
Get that snowball rolling.
For sure.
And we did ask. Drew asked like, what game are you excited to do some stuff on? Do you have any like cool projects that you're going to be doing this year? That's kind of what I want to ask to close out. Like, is there something you're excited about that you're going to be doing this year during the season that people can look forward to? And also mention just the name of your YouTube channel if anybody does not.
Well,
the
name of it is Brett Kollmann, which is my name.
That's super easy.
Because I'm not creative when it comes to naming things at all. In terms of cool projects, like I'm working with Caesars like this whole week, kind of doing a video about like how to do a weekend in Vegas if you're coming in for a Raiders game. Like
a lot of people will be doing that.
And a lot of people will be doing
I love a lean into like a lifestyle thing from a sports bettor standpoint. That's huge.
And that's the thing is like this is the only kind of like quote unquote lifestyle type thing I would do because it revolves around 2 things that I do a lot, which is gambling and going to football games. So, but it also just happens to be in a great place like Las Vegas, which I've loved.
Does it include a capstone of you'll be at Raiders Ravens on Monday?
I absolutely will.
Oh, that's
and again, it's such a beauty. Like I had so many buddies, not only from Minnesota, but other people from other cities. I know that like, hey, my team is playing the Knights. Like I can really spin this. No, it's not a gambling trip. Money we're going to
hockey.
It's like the Kalaji tweet. Like, this team can really move it tape to tape. Like I really just want to watch. I almost turned into a bit of a hockey fan because I'm like, I can get a Vegas trip out of this. Like, that's going to happen when these teams. When the away team, you're going to see some.
I'm just stunned it took so long. Like, what?
Yeah,
how did it take so long for pro sports to end up?
Oh, we
Vegas?
need an NBA team now.
Well, everything.
Yeah, they're just
the Athletics need to move.
Yeah,
like honestly, get out of the
just get the whole Bay Area pipeline.
There's been some talk about that.
As far as I wouldn't be surprised.
I would love to see a baseball.
But do you really want to play?
It needs to be indoors
in July.
We've learned that from the Diamondbacks.
Put that indoors. Use the Raiders Stadium, and they need to get the dirt back out on the field.
Oh God! Cut this.
I missed the Raiders right around the dirt.
That was the worst.
No, of course I'm kidding.
I talked to some guys that actually played on that dirt, by the way, and they said like nothing else hurt as a professional football player, like running full speed and then like somebody swipes your ankle from behind and you just face plant right into that dirt, especially like early year when it's just hot and it's like you're just falling into a stove. I'm happy for
Raiders. Not even like the frozen tundra where you're already a little numb.
So it's so much worse.
You feel it all.
I played football, and the hard, cold ground sucked. Yeah. I remember there was one field where it's like, they haven't watered this in like 6 years, and it's been raining. And it was just like the really hard ground in the middle of like September. It was hot. Like, this is worse. We're playing on concrete today. This sucks. All right. Also, where can people find you on Twitter? Is that
same uncreative name. It's all at Brett Kollmann on Instagram, on TikTok, on Twitter, on YouTube.
Excellent.
TikTok, by the way, I don't know if you guys are on TikTok. You really got.
I made a cool scorpion TikTok earlier.
Excellent. All right. Well, best of luck this NFL season. Appreciate your time and keep up the great work. Absolutely love all your content. And let's get some winners.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Thanks for watching.
Hit the music, Dan.
Let's jack the music up.
Is he making a sign like he can't play the music?
I think it's just
fix it in post.
Fix it in post.
Oh, he needs us to play the music. That's the issue. We can play the music.
Honestly, I don't know it's the same if we don't have.